Howdy, guys. Jimmy Song here, and welcome to another edition of Bitcoin Tech Talk Q&A, where we talk about this past week's Bitcoin technical news, and I try to help you guys understand some of the stuff that's going on. Anyway, if you have not, please subscribe to my newsletter. Let's get straight to it. Let's start looking at some of the news from my newsletter. All right. As always, if you are not subscribed to the newsletter, you can using the links in the show notes. In particular, the newsletter link that will have all of the details on how you can get this news every Monday morning. Anyway, issue number 122, February 4, 2019, and there are some really interesting articles. Let's take a look at some of these. The reports of Bitcoin's environmental damage are garbage. This is from Robert Sherratt, and a really well-researched article, very good analysis of the Bitcoin energy claims. A lot of people, as you guys know, claim that Bitcoin uses way too much energy, that it's taking away from everybody else and so on. It's very much a zero-sum scarcity mentality kind of argument. Absolutely destroys that argument in this article. It's very detailed, goes through who made this claim. It's really this one guy, De Vries, who's just sort of like the poster child for somebody that doesn't really understand math or statistics, or is just being straight up deceitful about what the energy consumption of the Bitcoin network is. A lot of it is really, really interesting. In particular, there's a whole section on hydroelectric power, which I found really fascinating. Basically, for a lot of hydro manufacturers, it's not economical to transmit the energy to the places that it would get used, so they don't actually produce energy that they could be producing. But because Bitcoin mining equipment is, if you have Bitcoin mining equipment nearby, then you can produce it. So it's energy that never would have been produced in the first place that's going into a lot of these miners. And they call it pure profit, because really doesn't cost them very much to produce that energy, and they're getting to sell it for 1 or 2 cents per kilowatt hour or something like that. Really, really good article on sort of a peek into mining and energy, and how it all comes to pass, and how Bitcoin really opens up more avenues of energy production in ways that we really didn't have before. And if you think about energy in terms of Bitcoin, it's what Bitcoin does is it expands the energy pie as a result. Renewables and a lot of these other technologies that aren't really easy to harness or transmit, you make much more. You make it a lot easier for those enterprises to make a profit, and you're in a sense making it possible to make that more prominent, and advance those technologies, because there's a clear economic incentive. And this is how the market works. Basically, you should read this if you have any concerns about the economic impact of the energy usage in Bitcoin. Very good article, highly recommend it. Another link I put in there is the Bitcoin Developer Network. This is, in particular, the network statistics page of the Bitcoin Developer Network. It's a fairly new site, but it has a lot of really good developer resources on how to do certain things. One of my former students is involved in the creation of this, but it's a really, really good site for figuring out how to get statistics on certain things. So, I mean, there's a DNS seed dump, and you can get the software that various people are running. Rockchain's the main guy, but really good website, pretty good way of getting your own statistics off the network instead of trusting other people. Really, really good stuff. Highly recommend you guys read it. yeah, I mean, take the time to actually like surf on this stuff. There's a lot of really cool stuff here, like the CLI sandbox. And yeah, I mean that one goes to some other stuff. But yeah, really good stuff. Highly recommend it. Another one that I wanted to talk about, I mentioned it earlier on Tone Show, but this is Miniscript. This is a talk by Peter Wolla during the Stanford Blockchain Conference. Really cool stuff here, and this is where it comes up with a policy language that's not really malleable and compiles to script, which is amazing because you can describe things in a much easier way than script does. So you can compile the policy language that he came up with, where it's all about, you know, this private key needs to sign, and this private key needs to sign, or this set of private keys can sign, or this one always needs to sign, and so on. And doing it in a way that's unmalleable, or like not malleable, and reducing malleability is good in a lot of ways. But you know, adding that makes it so that the transaction IDs and things are stable. Really cool stuff, you guys. I mean, this like sort of like a layer on top of Bitcoin, if you will. It's kind of like a smart contract language that will work with Bitcoin, because you can always compile it down to script. So script is the smart contract language behind Bitcoin. Really cool stuff. Encourage you to look at it, especially this little demo here, because you can change you know, some of the stuff here. You can make it like PKA, you know, like this stuff. And I think if you compile it this way, parse error. Okay, so okay, so that's why you have to use C, because it's always a dummy compressed key. I guess we can put an uncompressed key here if yeah. So there you go. And you can see all of the really cool things that you can like. It just compiles straight to script, which is really cool, and you can see what it will look like with the check sequence verify. Those 1,000 time units, I think, are 512 seconds times 1,000 or something like that. Anyway, it's really cool. Encourage you guys to take a look at it. This is probably the future of how to make script more useful, and having sort of a very limited set of script elements to work with. Give it a lot of security, give it a lot of analyzability, and you can be more assured because you can have formal proofs of stuff like this a lot easier than Bitcoin script. So really cool stuff. Encourage you guys to take a look at it. All right. Here's another one. This is another talk from the Stanford Blockchain Conference. This one's from Jeremy Rubin, and it is Spork, Probabilistic Bitcoin Soft Forks. And this is a kind of a mind-blowing kind of idea, which is that you know, like the motivating problem was SegWit and how it became politicized, and BIP9 was used as by miners as a way to vote on something instead of you know, like most soft forks, it should just sort of be the market that gets to decide. People, you know, that get to decide whether or not they use it. Anyway, the idea of sporks, or sort of probabilistic forks, I think is what it stands for, is that you make it so that it costs the miner something every time they try to they still sort of have the ability to kind of vote or signal readiness or whatever, but it costs them something, and that's because there's a probabilistic activation, which is at the heart of this. So every time you find a proof of work, you use that to figure out if the feature activates, and if it meets some threshold, then it activates. If not, then it doesn't activate. So for a miner, if they if they mine a block but it satisfies this thing, they would have to throw it away, throw that whole proof of work away. In which case, it doesn't activate, but it actually costs them something. They have skin in the game. They have to throw that block away. So that's whatever the block reward, block subsidy plus all the fees. They would have to throw that away. And that's what's really interesting about this whole concept is if you make it like more skin in the game-ish, then miners they're going to have to have a really good reason or financial incentive to prevent something from going through. So for something like SegWit, this would have been really helpful because a lot of miners that didn't signal would, it would have been auto signaling, but based on the hash of the proof of work, they would have to figure out, okay, do we really want to throw this away, or do we want it to activate on the network? So it's an interesting idea, and it adds a little game theory into the activation of particular features, which make it really, really cool. But yeah, it's an idea. I mean, I doubt it gets in anytime soon, but it's something to consider, especially if there's some sort of minor opposition to a particular feature or something like that. All right, labs.co. So this is a way to sign up to look at like new Lightning apps. I always think Lightning apps are pretty interesting and see what people come up with. So encourage you guys to do that. Here is another one, HTLCs considered harmful. So HTLCs are hash time lock contracts, and they are really at the base of a lot of atomic swaps, including a lot of the stuff in Lightning. It uses hash time lock contracts. And this was, there was a post to the Lightning dev mailing list a while back about how hash time lock contracts are really free options. And this expands on it significantly, talking about how they're really kind of harmful because you do have the option, somebody has to go first in a hash time lock contract. If I'm trading A for B, then I need to go first. And if A gets to go first, they essentially have a free option. So how do you prevent that abuse? And that's not a trivial problem. The conclusion is that by Daniel Robinson is that, okay, maybe they're kind of harmful. Maybe we need some sort of other mechanism. Encourage you guys to take a look at it. Again, this was at the Stanford Blockchain Conference. Really good stuff. All right, state channels. This a more formal sort of definition of state channels or payment channels or the atomic unit of the Lightning Network. It's a way to formalize it and figure out what's going on. It's for the technically inclined, totally would encourage you to read this and so that we can all talk about Lightning Network payment channels in a consistent way. Really good stuff. Last one, I think. Oh no, two more from the Stanford Blockchain Conference. They had a lot of really good talks. This one is privacy preserving multi-hop locks. So it's similar to the last one. It gives you a way to talk about it. Various Lightning related things, including like this thing, novel wormhole attack. I don't really understand this yet. I'm gonna have to read it a little more closely. But yeah, it's a payment channel network. It's all based on ECDSA. So how do you lock it? How do you make it secure, and so on. Encourage you guys to read that. Finally, we have threshold signatures, which is something that I've been wanting to see in Bitcoin for a while. I think Connor from Lightning Labs did something with that with 2 of 2 threshold signature. But basically, if you guys don't know what it is, threshold signature is the ability for me to provide a part of a signature and another person or other parties to provide another part of the signature. So you might have you might split up a key into 7 pieces, and essentially you could have M of N. It's sort of like multi-sig, except you preserve privacy on chain. So it's a really cool scheme. The only thing about threshold signatures is that it requires a lot of interactivity. If you have 4 of 7 or something like that, those 4 people need to go back and forth like multiple times. And this goes into sort of an analysis of threshold signatures and the security properties and so on. Really good stuff. Encourage you guys to read it. Take a look at it if you're interested in those. One of the applications might be you have 2 of 2 threshold signature. You're running a full node at home, a light client on your wallet, and just to make sure that you're not compromised in some way. Whenever you sign a transaction, you both pieces have to sign off, and if you can't contact your node that you trust at home, then you can just say, okay, I might be man in the middle at this point or something like that. So let's just not do the transaction. That would be like one of the applications, but there's a lot more. Really cool stuff. I would encourage you again to read it. Once again, Bitcoin Tech Talk newsletter is available to sign up for in the show notes. Please sign up if you are interested. A couple other things, programming blockchain. I am coming to New York right around Consensus. I think these are the 2 days after Consensus. Sign up if you are interested in learning about Bitcoin and all the programming stuff around it. Later this week, I will be in London doing my seminar there. I also have my book coming out. The cover is a little outdated. If you look at Amazon, you'll see that the cover has changed. O'Reilly updated all of its covers recently, and this is going to be one of the launch titles for the new cover. But yeah, it's still got the honey badger, and they stopped with the color scheme. It's you can pre-order it now. They did up the list price to $70, but that's because all of the pictures in the inside are in color now. Yeah, final thing is the Carnivory dinner. We are going to have it in London. I did have to change venues. Just a few people were getting uncomfortable with how public the venue was. And we want to practice good OPSEC if there's a lot of Bitcoin people nearby. So it's not going to be Brazilian barbecue anymore. It's going to be steak. And it's going to be fun. There's always I'm going to have some prizes and fun games and things like that. It's going to be networking. Lots of people that are going to be participating. Please contact me if you're at all interested in like paying via Bitcoin or something like that. I use Eventbrite because it's they manage a lot of things well. I would love to see a competitor that does it with Bitcoin or even better Lightning, something like that. Right now, that something like that doesn't really exist yet. I mean, BTC Pay is pretty close, and Tone's working on having a site that will do all of that on its own. So anyway, that is about it. Let's see if there are any questions that I can answer in the chat. Let's see. Does anyone know how much is the capacity of the biggest Bitcoin farm? Nobody really knows that. When invite Leah to my channel? I don't know, maybe sometime in the future. I don't really know. What do you think core devs will focus on once the base layer is ossified? What percentage will stay and remain? I mean, core devs will continue working on the base layer. There's plenty of work to do. I really don't know. It's ossified in the sense that everything that worked previous will continue to work, but there's always sort of new features that people are clamoring for, new abilities that people would like to see, and they're all voluntary, right? You don't have to use them if you don't want to. And certainly, they need to be proven out over time before people are comfortable using it. But it's gonna take. I think there's plenty of work for at least the next 15 years. I really doubt anyone is going to be like, there's nothing left to do. There's plenty of stuff left to do. Plenty of interesting things that interesting edges that we can explore and things like that. All right. Do you feel like LTC is trying to bully BTC into adopting confidential transactions on layer one? I don't think confidential transactions are really a layer one thing. It should be a layer two thing, and that's because you want to be assured of the 21 million limit, and that's really, really important for a variety of reasons, but mostly because that proves its scarcity. Is Graincoin a good investment? Probably not. I don't know. I don't like their monetary policy. So from an Austrian perspective, I don't think it's a very good investment. Beam and Mimblewimble, those are the two implementations, and I do pay attention to them for their technical stuff, but not necessarily their price. All right, so that's about it for the questions. Thank you guys for watching and asking questions and things like that. That about does it for this episode. Let me stop screen sharing. Yeah, and there's a lot of really interesting things coming out, a lot of really interesting ideas. I think Spork and Miniscript will probably have something done with them in the near future. I like they're just such cool ideas. Anyway, hope all of this helps you. This song is done.